Good morning. I am Patrick D. McCoy, and welcome to Across the Arts. I am so delighted to be here today with acclaimed composer Jeffrey Mumford. Let me just tell you a little bit about this accomplished DC native. We are so glad to have him. Jeffrey Mumford is a U.S. composer whose orchestral works have been performed by the National Symphony Orchestra, Minnesota Orchestra, Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, Cleveland Orchestra, St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, and American Composers Orchestra. His music has been especially praised by the New York Times as being a philosophy of music, making that embrace both raw and passion and gentle imaginistic poetry. Mumford's compositions, though thoroughly modern, are evocative, explore the sensuous and tactile nature of sound in subtle and sophisticated ways. As I mentioned, Mumford was born at Washington, D.C., and holds degrees from the University of California at Irvine and the University of California, San Diego. He was a student of and Lawrence Moss. Mumford, among with poet Bruce Weigel, holds the rank of distinguished professor in the Division of Arts and Humanities at Lorain County Community College in Ohio. He formerly taught at the Washington Conservatory of Music and served as artist in residence at Bowling Green State University and served as assistant professor of composition and composer in residence at the Oberlin College Conservatory of Music. Now, I could go on and on and on about the accomplishments of this great composer, but please let us welcome Jeffrey Mumford.
Good morning. How are you?
It is so good to have you. I feel like this conversation is so overdue. I feel like we've been, passing like ships in the night in Facebook land, being friends for so many years on Facebook.
I
And of
know.
course, I did meet you a few years ago at the Kennedy Center, but I'm so glad you are here today.
I am too, and thank you for having me.
Now, Jeffrey, as I mentioned when I was reading your bio, it was just so many great things to mention, and I mean, I'm sure that didn't even cover uh, the entire scope of your accomplishments. But I want to start with the piece that I mentioned about Washington D.C. because I think I was even surprised when I learned that you are a native of Washington D.C. So talk to me a little bit about your growing up here in the nation's capital.
Well, I grew up in Washington, on 17th Street Northeast. We have a Franciscan monastery and Catholic university, and I
Yes.
went to. I tell people my earliest musical education was in the basement of our house, where my father had such a huge Count Basie collection. You wouldn't believe it, and we listened to Count Basie and Duke Ellington, John Washington, all these classics. As a child, was part of sound in our house, as well as he turned out the first performance I ever heard of the Emperor Concerto, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir performance of Messiah.
Hold,
We have
hold
people
on a moment, Jeffrey.
Christmas
I'm sorry.
album,
It's
all kinds of memories. I remember the basement being where music happened in our.
Jeffrey, could you hold on for a moment? Jeffrey, could you hold for on a moment? Do you by any chance have another a browser open? It sounds like we're getting an extra feedback. Do you have the do you have your Facebook page open by any chance or anything like that? Let's see, that might be better. Can you hear me? Hello, Jeffrey, can you hear me? We're experiencing a bit of a technical difficulty, but hopefully we can rectify soon. Let's try now. Jeffrey, are you there? Here we go. Are you there? Jeffrey, can you unmute?
I did unmute.
Okay, there you go. Now I can hear you. So we lost a little bit, and I hope that this will clear up. But I think you were talking about how you first was introduced in the basement of your home to music. So we may, I'm not sure how much of that um, um, got recorded or not. But could you maybe just, I hate to ask you to go back. Could you maybe go back to your upbringing and how you were exposed to music in your
Sure.
home in the basement?
My father had a large jazz collection of which Count Basie figured very prominently. So we listened to lots of Count Basie and jazz ballads, Dinah Washington, Gloria Lynn. He was the first person who introduced me to Beethoven's Emperor Piano Concerto. We trimmed our Christmas tree to Ramsey Lewis and Mormon Tabernacle Choir. It was a very eclectic. It was a really great music education even before I set foot in the classroom. So the basement was the focal point of where music happened in our house.
That is amazing. Many people who they begin in music. I mean, it starts in the home. So I'm very grateful to hear you mention that. Now, as far as you were listening to music and that, um, when did you know? Say, I want to pursue music. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, early on, I went into college fully prepared to be a painter because I love painting and drawing. But I always felt like I heard certain melodies in a previous lifetime. I've always loved music. I took theory class, one of the early theory classes at Stilwell Friends in 10th grade. We were encouraged to improvise and write pieces in the style of the Baroque. And that was very inspiring. Um, I think, if I'm sure if you know the Songs of the Auvergne by Joseph Canteloup, those are pieces were French orchestrated by the French composer Vincent Dandy. And I love those pieces. And I knew that when I first heard them live, I'd heard them in a previous lifetime. Made a very big impression on me.
That's amazing how the visual and the audio, combines and inspires moments like that. Now, um, as you were, being introduced, and then you went on and you were being inspired by music. A lot of times, and I know this is probably wasn't necessarily in my talking points, but I know a lot of times when young people, even now that I encounter, when they say I'm going to be uh a classical musician, or I'm going to be in the performing arts, or I'm going to be an artist, sometimes they get pushed back, by people in their circle, because they might think that, oh, the arts is not lucrative or anything like that. Did you ever encounter uh anything like that in your pursuit to be in the performing arts, especially as a composer?
Oh, yes, yes. There were the voices of overcaution saying, maybe you need something else to fall back on. You need to think about this carefully. I was not. I don't feel like I was supported as much as I could have been, but I kept, it was something that I wasn't going to give up on. Um, my parents were both professionals. My mother was a school teacher, my father a dentist. They were concerned, um, but it was something I just had to do. It's a calling. I really figure I felt, and I feel now that music is a sacred calling. It's a calling. It's not you. You don't choose it. It chooses you, and you have to answer it.
That I couldn't have said that better myself. Now, you were talking about, of course, um, your parents and things like that. I just am amazed at so many stories that I listen to, how um, the family life at home and the church and things like that form that kind of cultural center, in one's development. But I also want to talk a little bit further outside of the household and speak about mentors, because we know that mentors are very important. Who is like some of your early important mentors really inspired you this path to be a musician or a composer?
Well, when I was in sixth grade, there was a program where public schools would send kids to concerts, the National Symphony, at that time at Constitution Hall, the infamous Constitution Hall. And I was so impressed by the surroundings and what I heard. And I remember the program, even back then, the 1812 Overture, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and the New World Symphony. So much of an impact did it make on me that I still remember it to this day from sixth grade. At that time, I was playing clarinet. That was my first instrument. And seeing all these musicians on stage making these amazing sounds, um, I had no idea that later on I would be someone writing for these kinds of ensembles. All I knew at that time was what I was just swept by the power of the sound that I was hearing.
Isn't that? I mean, it's just amazing. See how I love to hear where people have these full circle moments. And you mentioned the clarinet. Do you ever get tempted to ever visit that, or you just solely focus on just the writing?
Well, I haven't picked up the clarinet since the first year we moved here. I still have it, but I don't have a lot of time to practice. Probably it'll be fun to revisit it at some point. It's just I'm very happily busy with doing what I'm doing, but I still have it,
Mhm.
as well as my old guitar. I still have my old guitar as well.
That's amazing. So I want to fast forward just a bit. We kind of talked about how you kind of caught the music bug, so to speak, by by listening and the clarinet and things of that nature. But I want to fast forward a little bit because again, I know I just kind of you know sailed through your bio, but it's quite extensive. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you like this because you are a native son of Washington, D.C., and you have accomplished all of these great things that I just want to take this moment to celebrate. Because as you know, a lot of times when you are from a place, people don't necessarily see the greatness that one has accomplished because as that old biblical saying, a prophet is without honor in their hometown. Not to say that you haven't been recognized, but in terms of just widely, we should know, every Washingtonian should know the greatness of your output. And you have won so many awards and so many recognitions and things like that. So I want to kind of center now on your breadth of compositions that you have composed, and one that I came across that I would like to play, if you don't mind, is your piece called "Let Us Breathe." Is because the cellist who is being featured, Annie Jacobs Perkins, performs it in this clip. So hopefully my technology will cooperate. So you all just bear with them and see, can I bring this up? And the pandemic, it taught us a lot about trying to navigate this stuff. So just bear with me 1 second. I think I can share this successfully. It looks like it's cooperating. So let's see here. We're gonna bring that on, and I'm gonna maximize this. And let's see. Just gonna see, can I do this? And we're almost there. There we go. All right, this is Let Us Breathe. And I am going to push play, and hopefully we will be in business. play all of that, but I just wanted to give you all just a hint of that work. So, Jeffrey, talk to me a little bit about this piece, "Let Us Breathe." I mean, when I first read that title, it conjured a lot of thoughts for me with not having background. So, talk to me about this piece.
Well, this piece is part of a series commissioned by the Cincinnati Symphony in response to the increasing violence, police violence against people of color. And George Floyd was a focal point of that and inspired many, many pieces of discussion, way overdue discussion of what we have to put up with as people of color. So the orchestra was very visionary in putting together a number of composers to respond to that horrible, horrible situation. So the title for me echoes that. Let me breathe, and let us all breathe collectively as a community. Let our voices be heard. Um, and they wanted the pieces to be very short, so this piece was only just about 2 minutes long, and it was very inspiring to me. To I love the cello for one thing, as you'll probably hear when you hear the concert. I love the cello, so I was very happy to be able to write another piece for solo cello, and it's a very emotional piece for me. Um, at the end, there's a high trill on E flat, which I like to think offers hope. Piece is
Mm.
very transparent and sparse at in moments and very passionate in other moments, and hopefully speaks to the issue.
So when you all get a chance, I hope that you will go on YouTube and view and listen to that entire piece. "Let Us Breathe." I didn't want to play the whole thing. We were getting a little bit of some distortion, but it's definitely there. And while we're talking about this, even though the tragedy of George Floyd is tragedy, it was something that really opened our eyes, in a myriad of ways, especially when it comes to the performing arts. And but what it did do in a positive light was to amplify the work of Black composers. Some of the Black composers who may not have been known prior to that, and something that you have been doing. You have, I mean, uh, you have a recording, that celebrates, the works of Black composers. Talk to me a little bit about that more recent recording that you have the featuring the Black composers such as Adolphus Hale Store.
Oh, you're talking about the solo violin recording by Wanchi?
Yes, the most recent recording that you had mentioned to me in your
Well, I have two
notes.
that was a recording made by this professor of violin, Wanchi, who has recorded a solo piece of mine, Adolphus Stork as well. Judith Shayton, a former professor at University of Virginia, and then I also have a CD on Albany of three concertos of my own: of a violin concerto, a cello concerto, and a piano concerto.
Wonderful. And of course, I you have we have all of these different connections. And so Washington Conservatory of Music, which I mentioned that you taught on the faculty, and the conservatory assisted in the recording, especially with the one with the cello concerto. So we are grateful for that connection. It's just so amazing. So let us move to the order of business while we're here. Post Classical Ensemble. I know people are probably waiting, well, when is it going to get to that? You all have this great concert coming up at the Kennedy Center on January the 10th. Amazing Grace in Paradisium. Talk to me a little bit about that and your role as guest curator for this concert.
Well, thank you. I'm very, very grateful to Angel Gil Ordonez putting this together. We worked together before in 2013. He conducted a piece of mine at the National Gallery when I did a 3-week residency there. We got to know each other. And I've known of him for a long, long time and respected his work a great deal. And I've known about the Post Classical Ensemble for a long time as well. And the amazing work and the visionary work and the diverse repertoire they play has always been very inspiring. So to get a chance to work with him is a great honor. He asked me to help curate this concert, and in so doing, we tossed lots of ideas around would be appropriate, what would work together. Um, and so it was a learning experience for me to research some of George Walker's choral music, which I had not known before. I've known a lot of his other music, certainly his instrumental music, but look, in finding these gorgeous choral pieces of George Walker was a part of that, as well as this section of a piece by Luciano Berio, contemporary Italian composer who's no longer with us, but wrote a piece in 1968 called Sinfonia, from which this piece, O King, celebrating the legacy of Martin Luther King in, at a time just after he was assassinated. A very powerful piece. It's very crystalline, it's very glowing. The sonorities, the timbres, the instruments are all very sparkly. I thought it was a very appropriate piece to add to this concert as well. And then we talked about the Adagietto for the Mahler's Fifth Symphony and a piece of Margaret Bond's. Um, so that's kind of how things got together. And then happily be able to present my cello concerto as well as the solo cello piece.
I am so looking forward to the program because I love the fact how you all have thematically tied this program together with the In Paradisium, which you, if I'm not mistaken, that movement is from the Requiem. Um, that phrase Paradisium, and then how you have the Amazing Grace, which is a timeless everyone, I'm sure, know all around the world. So you're going to begin with John Newton's traditional setting, but then I understand at the end there's an opportunity for everyone in the audience to make their Kennedy Center debut.
Right, right.
So I think that, and I definitely want to give a plug to the Coalition for African Americans in the Performing Arts, who are partnering with Post Classical, in this concert with the Kappa Chorale. Especially excited also to hear soprano Katarina Burton, who is one of the K Fritz young artists who is featured in the program, and of course Annie Jacobs Perkins, the cellist who you all heard an excerpt from in the clip. So this is going to be an amazing concert, and I want to ask you. I think you may have already touched on this. When I'm talking about this theme in Paradis, well, Amazing Grace in Paradisium, and um, you know, just the things that have gone on in society. I mean, last year, and certainly during the pandemic, that was a very um, tumultuous time. Now we have an opportunity post COVID, so to speak, to bring people together for this carefully themed program. For you, what is like the final takeaway that you would hope that the audience would get after being a part of such an evening of music?
That's a very good question. I guess I want the audience to be inspired by what they hear, that the music communicates something substantial to them. It inspires them to further listening of the composers on the program and other composers as well, certainly composers of color, to realize that there's a long, long legacy of music by composers of color within the classical, quote unquote, Western art tradition, and light a fire under them.
Yes, yes. And I think with this program, you're definitely going to light a fire under those audiences. I'm looking forward to being there. And I want to go back to the theme with the use of the hymn Amazing Grace, because what I find fascinating is that here the program starts with John Newton's, a traditional setting, as I mentioned, but it closes with an arrangement by another DC bass composer, Evelyn Simpson Curitan, who most people know from her arrangements from the great concert of spirituals with Kathleen Battle and Jesse Norman at Carnegie Hall. She arranged many of those spirituals, and she's certainly a celebrated organist and singer here, right in our midst here in our nation's capital. So I think that's wonderful to have these two bookends for this great evening of music. And I am just so grateful to Angel and the Post Classical Ensemble for illuminating this evening of music. But I've definitely, Jeffrey, again, I just can't say it enough how glad I am here to be sharing this even this virtual space with you, because I definitely want to go back to the fact that you see native, and I can't keep on. I just can't harp on that enough, because as I mentioned, a lot of times when you're from a space, a person goes off and they do all these great things. But I'm just glad that your hometown has the opportunity to celebrate you in a big way. And what better place than the Kennedy Center? So congratulations to you. Welcome home.
Well, thank you. DC will always be in my heart. Always. It is my home.
Mm,
Energetically, spiritually, it is,
that's a
you know,
That's amazing. I know I want to ask you, because a lot of times when I interview composers, sometimes I miss the very thing that someone who is a composer wants to know from a composer. So I want to ask you a couple of things. How would you personally describe your compositional style?
um, I guess I would call it lyrical atonality. I think I'm a romantic at heart, but despite perhaps the thorniness and dissonance of the texture, I think there's a line that connects various aspects of what's going on in a piece of music. I try to set up conversations between instruments and dramatic scenarios, but I hope my music is also very inspired by light, cloud imagery. As I said, my undergraduate I experienced had a great deal to do with painting, and the music took over my sophomore year. But I think my music is very visual, and I hope that the listener will see that. Um, but more than that, I think that there are very strong interconnections between groups of instruments, within the case of a solo instrument, between register highs and lows, modes of attack, timbre, articulation. I want the listener to be taken on a journey. Um, and the journey, I hope, is inevitable without being predictable. I want them to have experienced a kind
Mm.
of transformation.
Well, that is powerful, and I am so excited, and I'm looking forward to it. And and I understand. I'm excited to share with the audience that you will be recognized with the Post Classical Ensemble's American Roots Artist Award. So congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
so, as I mentioned before, yes, indeed. And so, before, as I mentioned, the concert will conclude with everyone having the opportunity to sing timeless hymn, Amazing Grace. So, you all, I have been so honored today to join acclaimed composer, DC native Jeffrey Mumford, who will be featured on January the 10th at 7:30 p.m. in the Terrace Theater in this program called Amazing Grace in Paradisium with the Post Classical Ensemble. That concert will also feature Kappa Chorale and soprano Katarina Burton. And our dear cellist, who we featured earlier in the program. Why am I drawing a blank while I'm speaking? But we're looking forward
Annie
to
Jacobs
the program, and
Perkins.
I'm going to put. Thank you. Thanks. See how we see the teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Thank you so much. So you heard that, and so I'm going to put the link here. So I hope that you all will go ahead and get your tickets. Get your tickets to the concert. If you will go to that link that is also on the screen. at kennedycenter-center.org. Information on how you can be announced. I heard from a little birdie that the tickets are almost out. That's what I heard. I may be wrong. The bird maybe
I
he
heard
may
that
flew
too.
in the wrong direction,
I heard
but I
from that
think
bird too. Yeah, that would be great to see a
yeah.
full
So if
house.
you can, yeah, it will. It will. And for such a powerful and very important program. So again, I hope that you all will get your tickets. If they're left, go to kitty-center.org. Look up Amazing Grace Classical Ensemble. Again, thank you all for joining me this morning as I have been in conversation with acclaimed composer Jeffrey Mumford. And I the Washington Conservatory of Music and its artistic director, Kathy Judd, for partnering with Across the Arts to bring this composer. And before I sign off, since I mentioned that, Jeffrey, I want to thank you on behalf of the conservatory of bringing people together in the pandemic, because I understand you taught a virtual class featuring Black composers where people got to come and virtually share and learn about these great composers who may not get an audience. So thank you.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it a great deal.
Yes, indeed. Been watching and listening to Across. I'm your host, Patrick D. McCoy, and we have been chatting with composer Mumford. We do hope that you will be in the house on January 10th at 7 p.m. in the Terrace Theater at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. For more information, please go to the link which is on the screen. And again, I would not be a good person in connection with Washington Conservatory, but I would encourage you to go to our website, washingtonconservatory.org, where you can find out ways how you can be involved in our programs there. Again, I am your host, Patrick Boy, and thank you so much for joining us today. Jeffrey, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. So again, please subscribe to Across on the YouTube channel, and we will be most glad to help you. Thank you much, and we are looking forward to the concert on Wednesday, January the 10th, 7:30 p.m. at the Kennedy Center, the Post Classical Ensemble. Have a good day.